The maître d' didn't even try to hide his disapproval when Brenner walked in holding the hands of his twin daughters. Straightening his tie, the man raised an eyebrow and asked, with no warmth, "Do you have a reservation?" Brenner glanced down at Nola and Jovie, both in matching pink backpacks, still in their ballet outfits, eyes wide with excitement about their special dinner. "No," he replied. "But, is there any table available?" The response was clipped. "We're full." Brenner hesitated for a second, his pride aching. But he had promised them this night. "Please. It doesn't have to be fancy. I just want to sit down with my girls. It means a lot to us." The maître d' didn't budge. "I'm sorry, sir." Nola tugged at the hem of his shirt and whispered, "We can get pizza again, Daddy." "I don't mind." But he minded. A lot. For the past 2 years, ever since Carla walked out on them, Brenner had done everything he could to keep the smallest promises. It wasn't about the food, it was about giving his daughters something beautiful, something normal. Something that said, "Your father still shows up." And tonight, he was failing again. At a table across the dining room, seated alone beneath the soft glow of a candle, Sabine watched the exchange. Dressed in a crimson gown that clung to her like memory, she studied the man's posture, the tension in his shoulders, the pain in his eyes. It was a look she knew well. She had once worn it herself. Without a second thought, Sabine set down her wine glass, swept her hair behind one ear, and stood up. Just as Brenner turned to leave, humiliation prickling in his throat, Sabine's calm and graceful voice broke through the restaurant's quiet hum. "Excuse me, sir. Would you and your girls like to join me?" The maître d' froze in disbelief. Brenner stared, trying to make sense of what she was saying. A woman like her, inviting them? "I don't want to impose," he started, but she was already pulling out chairs. "You're not. Please sit." Nola and Jovie lit up like fireflies. Brenner hesitated only a moment before helping them into their seats. He was about to thank her when Sabine offered a soft smile. "I've been turned away from places like this before. I know how it feels." The waiter approached, clearly uneasy. "Menus for the table?" Sabine nodded. "Yes. And bring your best dish for the girls." Brenner looked at her, overwhelmed. But before he could say anything, she tilted her head and asked, "Brenner, is that you? This story is just getting started. So if it's already moved you, imagine what's coming next." Hit that like button to support powerful moments like this, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what happens, because the twist will leave you speechless. Brenner froze. The sound of his name coming from her mouth sent a chill down his spine, not from fear, but from recognition. His brows furrowed as he looked closer at her face, trying to piece together the memory. The soft curves of her cheeks, the way her voice wrapped around his name like silk. It was all familiar, yet unreachable. "I'm sorry," he said slowly. "Do I know you?" Sabine leaned back slightly, a sad smile brushing her lips. "I suppose it's been a long time. We met once. A long time ago. I doubt you'd remember." Nola and Jovie, completely oblivious to the moment between the adults, were busy admiring the silverware, tapping spoons against their cups and giggling. Sabine glanced at them, her expression softening. "They're beautiful," she said. "They look like you." Brenner nodded, forcing a small smile. "They're my world." His voice caught slightly in his throat. "They're why I fight through the days I don't think I'll make it." Sabine didn't ask where their mother was. Something in the way he said it told her everything she needed to know. The waiter returned with 3 children's menus and a bottle of wine Sabine hadn't ordered. "Courtesy of the chef," he said, avoiding Brenner's eyes. The maître d' lingered in the distance, watching the table with a tight jaw. Brenner noticed but ignored it. For once, he didn't feel ashamed, not with Sabine sitting across from him, leveling the room with her calm presence. I remember you now, Brenner finally said, setting down his glass. It was a fundraiser. At the hospital. You spoke about your brother, the one who passed away. Sabine's gaze dropped to her napkin. She nodded. Gareth. He was all I had. A beat passed between them, thick with the silence of shared loss. I admired your speech, Brenner added. It stayed with me. Sabine looked up, surprised. Most people forgot my name by dessert. I didn't, Brenner said quietly. The girls began coloring on their menus, voices overlapping in whispers about dessert. Sabine chuckled softly. You're doing a good job, you know. I can see it. It's not easy, being everything at once. Brenner blinked, taken aback. No one ever said that to him. Most people just assumed he was surviving. Barely. Thanks, he murmured. Some days I don't even know what I'm doing. But I try. Then Sabine leaned in, eyes narrowing slightly. Tell me something, Brenner. What really happened with Carla? The fork slipped from his fingers and clattered against the plate. For a moment, Brenner couldn't move. The clatter of the fork hitting the plate echoed louder than it should have, pulling glances from nearby tables. Jovie looked up, startled, and Nola instinctively reached for her father's hand under the table. Sabine didn't apologize for the question. She just waited, her eyes steady, not demanding, not invasive, but open, like she was offering him space he didn't even know he needed. Brenner took a deep breath, brushing his hand through his hair. She didn't die, if that's what you're wondering. He stared past Sabine's shoulder, into some place only he could see. She left, packed a suitcase while the girls were sleeping. Said she couldn't do it, that she'd been pretending for too long. He blinked slowly, then looked down at his lap. She left a note. 1 page. No goodbye for the girls. Just gone. His voice broke, and he quickly cleared his throat. I didn't chase her. I think part of me knew I'd already lost her months before she walked out that door. Sabine's fingers curled slightly around the stem of her wine glass, but she didn't drink. Her silence wasn't heavy. It felt like a kind of understanding. That must have broken something in you, she said softly. Brenner gave a quiet, bitter laugh. It broke everything. He paused. But I didn't have the luxury of falling apart. I had 2 little girls asking me every morning where their mom went. So I smiled. I said she was visiting Grandma. I lied. Until I couldn't anymore. Nola leaned into him now, her cheek resting on his arm, comforted by the rhythm of his voice, though she didn't fully understand the weight of his words. Sabine watched them, the way Brenner kept one hand steady on the table, the other resting protectively on his daughter's shoulder, and something tightened in her chest. You're stronger than you think, she whispered. Most men would have run from that kind of pain. Brenner shook his head. Most days I wanted to. But every time I opened the door, they were there. Meeting me. Saving me. The waiter brought over their meals, small plates for the girls, and a salmon dish for Sabine. Brenner had barely ordered anything, but he didn't seem to care. The scent of the food filled the table, but the appetite wasn't there. He looked across at Sabine, his eyes darker now. Why do you care? He asked. We barely know each other. You could have just watched us leave. Sabine took a breath, her voice low. Because once, someone stayed for me when everyone else walked away. And for a moment, neither of them spoke, but something had shifted between them. The table grew quiet, but it wasn't the kind of silence that felt awkward. It was thick, full of things unsaid, memories neither of them wanted to dig up but couldn't help letting rise. Sabine reached for her napkin, folding and unfolding it, her gaze now somewhere distant. Brenner watched her closely. She wasn't just being kind. There was something behind her eyes, a sorrow layered in elegance. She was holding something in too. Something old. Something sharp. I was 23 when I lost him, she finally said. Gareth. My brother. Her voice didn't crack. It was practiced now, part of her script. Drunk driver. He was walking home from his shift at the diner. I was supposed to pick him up, but I fell asleep watching TV. Missed his call. Her fingers trembled slightly. I didn't even get to say goodbye. She didn't look at Brenner when she said it. She couldn't. He leaned in slightly, his voice lower now. You're still carrying it. Sabine nodded slowly. Every day. I wear it under everything. The dresses, the makeup, the posture. But it's there. I think some things don't leave. We just learn to walk around them. Brenner looked at her with something close to reverence. She wasn't saving him. They were recognizing each other. Two people quietly drowning, keeping themselves afloat for the ones who still needed them. Meanwhile, Nola and Jovie had moved on to their dessert, twin scoops of vanilla ice cream with chocolate drizzle. Jovie dropped her spoon, giggled, and pointed at Sabine. You're really pretty. Like a lady on TV. Sabine laughed softly for the first time that evening, wiping a tiny smear of chocolate from Jovie's chin. And you're a heartbreaker in training. Brenner smiled, but there was a glint of something else in his eyes, something Sabine couldn't place. Gratitude. Or maybe guilt. He cleared his throat. Tonight wasn't supposed to go like this. I just wanted to make them feel special. Instead, I walked them into a place that made us feel small. Sabine shook her head gently. No. You walked them into a place that reminded them what kind looks like. That matters more. There was weight in her words, the kind that doesn't come from books or speeches. It came from surviving. As the check quietly arrived at the table, folded neatly in a leather booklet, Brenner reached for his wallet. But Sabine placed her hand gently over his. Don't. She paused, then added, This won't be the last time we sit at a table like this. The car ride back to Brenner's small two-bedroom apartment was quiet, the kind of quiet that settles deep and soft, like a blanket after a long day. Nola and Jovie fell asleep in the back seat, their heads leaning against each other, ice cream sticky fingers clutching tiny stuffed animals. Sabine rode in the front passenger seat, hands folded in her lap, gazing out the window at the passing streetlights, each one strobing gently across her face. You don't have to come up, Brenner said, his voice barely more than a whisper. She turned to him, meeting his eyes. I didn't come this far to disappear at the door. The apartment was small but warm, the kind of place that felt lived in, like a story still being written. Toys in the corner, drawings on the fridge, a worn sofa with a faded throw blanket. Brenner carried the girls one by one into their bedroom, tucking them in with a quiet tenderness that made Sabine's chest tighten. She watched from the hallway, arms folded, eyes tracing the way he smoothed their hair, kissed their foreheads, whispered something only fathers say when no one's listening. He came back into the living room, rubbing his neck, suddenly looking older. They ask about her sometimes, he said. Carla. They remember her voice, her perfume. But I don't know what to say anymore. I'm tired of lying, and I'm terrified of the truth. Sabine sat beside him on the couch, not too close. So you carry both. The silence and the truth. That's what good fathers do. He turned toward her. I don't feel good at it. Most days I feel like I'm barely holding the pieces together. She reached over, placing a hand over his. Then let someone hold one for you. It was the gentlest thing anyone had said to him in years. For a long time, no one had offered to carry any of it. People assumed he was strong. But he wasn't strong. He was surviving. And that's not the same thing. Brenner leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice low. Do you ever feel like you don't belong anywhere anymore? Like no matter how much time passes, you're still standing in the same room where everything fell apart. Sabine didn't answer right away. Her fingers drifted to the charm bracelet on her wrist, the one her brother gave her years ago. "I've never left that room," she whispered. "I just learned to decorate it." Then came a soft knock at the door. Not urgent, but intentional. Brenner stood, confused. It was nearly midnight. When he opened it, his face paled. Standing there was Carla. And she wasn't alone. What do you think Carla wants at the door? Forgiveness? The kids? A secret? Drop your theory in the comments. I'm reading them all. For a few seconds, Brenner couldn't move. Carla stood there on the threshold like a ghost, too real to ignore, too distant to reach. Her hair was longer, straighter, her makeup perfectly done, but there was something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Regret? Or calculation? Standing beside her was a man in a tailored suit, tall, clean-cut, holding a duffel bag. Brenner's stomach twisted. He didn't recognize the guy, but he already hated the way he stood close to Carla, like he belonged. "Hi, Brenner," she said softly. Her voice still had that same tone, sweet, careful, like she was constantly editing herself. From the couch, Sabine stood slowly, sensing something had shifted. She didn't say a word, but her body went still, alert. Brenner stepped outside the door, pulling it slightly behind him. "The girls are sleeping," he said, voice tight. "You don't get to show up out of nowhere and act like this is normal." Carla looked down, then back up. I know I don't deserve to be here. But I've been thinking about them. I want to see them." Brenner blinked. "After 2 years?" His voice cracked. "You didn't write. You didn't call." The man beside Carla finally spoke. "I'm James, Carla's fiancé." Fiancé. The word landed like a slap. Brenner stared at him, jaw locked. Carla nodded slowly. "We're getting married in the spring. I wanted you to hear it from me. But that's not why we came." She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded envelope. "We're moving to Chicago. And I want shared custody. I want them in our lives." Brenner's heart began to race, not with anger, but with something colder. Fear. Inside the apartment, Sabine moved to the hallway, just far enough to peek toward the door but not intrude. She could hear every word. The sound of Brenner's pain was different now. Harder, sharper. "You think you can just walk back in and take them with you?" he asked. "They don't even remember your face, Carla." Her eyes welled up. "That's why I need time. I made mistakes, Brenner. But I'm not the same woman I was when I left." A long silence filled the corridor outside. Then Brenner took a deep breath. "You can't just show up with a lawyer and a ring and rewrite everything we've lived through." His voice shook. "They're not pieces on a board. They're my daughters." Carla stepped forward, tears now streaking her perfect foundation. "I never stopped loving them. I just didn't know how to be a mother." Behind him, he heard soft footsteps. Nola stood there, sleepy-eyed, clutching her stuffed bear. She looked at Carla and whispered, "Daddy, who's that lady?" Brenner turned around slowly, swallowing the lump in his throat. Nola stood there in her pajama set, blinking sleepily, her hair a tangle of curls and innocence. She rubbed one eye with her fist and looked again at Carla, confused but not afraid. Jovie was behind her now, quieter, holding the edge of the hallway wall like it might protect her. Brenner knelt down. "Sweetheart, go back to bed, okay? Daddy will be there in a minute." Nola shook her head. "But that lady looks sad." The words cracked something open in Carla. Her lips trembled, but she knelt down too, eye level with her daughter. "Hi, Nola. I'm your mommy." The word hung there, too big for the hallway. Jovie frowned and stepped beside her sister. "But our mommy is in the photo on the shelf," she said. That's not you. Brenner closed his eyes, his hand gripping the edge of the doorframe so tightly his knuckles turned white. Sabine stepped closer now, not speaking, just grounding herself near the girls, a quiet support Brenner didn't know he needed. Carla nodded slowly, tears rolling down her cheeks. That is me. But I left. And I shouldn't have. I was scared. I didn't know how to be enough. Nola tilted her head. Enough for what? Her voice was so soft it could have broken glass. Carla looked up at Brenner. Enough to stay. She reached out her hand toward her daughters, hesitant. Jovie took a step back. Nola didn't move. Just stared. And then, quietly, she said, "You made Daddy cry a lot." That did it. Carla broke down, head in her hands, her shoulders shaking. James awkwardly tried to comfort her, but it was clear he didn't belong in this story. Sabine gently guided the girls back to their room, whispering something calming as she walked with them, her hand brushing Nola's hair in a silent promise of safety. When she returned to the living room, Brenner was still standing in the doorway, silent, unmoving. Carla wiped her eyes, trying to regain control. "I'm not asking you to forgive me tonight. I want to try. I want to start somewhere." Brenner finally turned his face toward her. "You want shared custody? That's not a handshake. That's a courtroom. That's lawyers. That's paperwork and arguments and more crying for them." His voice was hoarse. "They need peace, not tug of war." Sabine stepped forward then, calm and clear. Maybe what they need is to see what love looks like when it's earned, not just remembered. Carla looked at her, finally seeing her for what she was. Not a stranger. A presence. A threat. Or maybe a mirror. The apartment felt like it had shrunk. The air was heavy, stretched tight between silence and pain. Carla stood near the door, arms crossed now, walls going back up. James kept checking his watch, clearly uncomfortable. He didn't belong here, not in the past, and definitely not in the pieces of the present trying to glue themselves back together. Brenner walked toward the window, facing away from everyone, his voice low and rough. "You know what's crazy? I used to wait for this moment. For you to show up. For you to explain. For something to make sense." Behind him, Carla stayed quiet. He continued, "But now that you're here, I don't know what I feel. It's not anger. It's not relief. It's like I'm staring at someone I used to know, but I can't remember why I loved her." That one hit deep. Carla didn't fight it. She just let it settle in the room, like dust on old furniture. "I don't blame you for feeling that," she whispered. "But the girls, they still have time to know me, to love me. I just need you to let them." Sabine leaned against the archway, arms gently folded, her eyes locked on Brenner. She didn't interrupt. She knew this wasn't her moment. Not yet, but she was part of the moment anyway. A witness. A quiet pillar. "And what about when you leave again?" Brenner asked, turning to Carla. "What if they let you in, and then you disappear again? What if they ask for you at bedtime and I don't have an answer? Again?" His voice cracked, eyes glassy. "I can't do that twice. I barely survived the first time." Nola and Jovie had fallen asleep again, this time wrapped in each other like a shield. Sabine had checked on them before returning to the tension brewing in the living room. The apartment, though small, now held a battlefield. Memories, broken promises, new trust. And something else neither adult dared speak, the beginning of a new love where the old one once lived. Carla's eyes moved toward Sabine now, lingering a little longer than before. There was a sharpness there. Fear? Jealousy? Or simply recognition? "I'm not here to ruin your life, Brenner," Carla said. "I'm here because they deserve to know their mother. And I'm ready to fight for that." Brenner looked down, exhaling slow, tired. Then he looked at Sabine and asked the question that surprised them all. "Will you be there if I have to go to court?" The question lingered in the air like smoke. Brenner's voice had been steady, but his eyes revealed the storm behind it. Sabine blinked, caught off guard, not by the request, but by the vulnerability in it. He wasn't just asking for help. He was asking for her. To stand with him. To witness his fight, his pain, his hope. Sabine stepped forward slowly, crossing the room until she was just a breath away from him. "If you go to court, I'll be there. Not because you asked," she said softly, "but because you shouldn't do it alone." Across the room, Carla flinched, not visibly, but inside, where no one could see. She looked at James, who gave her a tight, shallow nod. He hadn't said a word in minutes. Maybe he finally understood that this wasn't about him. This was a wound being reopened in a house he had no part in building or breaking. Carla cleared her throat. "I didn't come here to divide anyone. I just wanted a chance." Her voice cracked. "But maybe I'm too late." Brenner sat down slowly, burying his face in his hands. "I don't want a legal war. But I also can't let them be hurt again." He looked up at her. "So, no. You don't get overnights. Not yet. You can visit. Here. With me present. You can rebuild, if that's what you want. But on their terms. Not yours." It wasn't anger in his voice. It was a father's boundary. One that had taken 2 years of broken sleep and quiet cries to build. Sabine placed a hand gently on his shoulder. Not possessive. Not symbolic. Just steady. Support. Carla looked at the two of them, her jaw tight, her pride catching in her throat. "You've changed," she said to Brenner. "You were never this strong when I left." Brenner gave a half-smile, tired but true. "That's because I didn't have to be. When you walked out, I had no other choice." The apartment was quiet again. Nola stirred faintly in the room down the hall, murmuring something in her sleep. It grounded Brenner instantly. Everything he did, every decision, every sacrifice, it was for them. Sabine looked toward the hallway, then back at him. "They don't need perfection. Just consistency. And love." Carla nodded slowly, the fight fading from her eyes. "Then I'll try. Whatever it looks like. I'll try." Brenner stood. "Then we start tomorrow. 1 hour. Here. No pressure. No promises." Carla picked up her coat. "Tomorrow." And as she walked out, Sabine turned to Brenner and whispered, "You're not the same man I met last night." The next morning came quietly, with soft golden light spilling through the thin curtains of the living room. Brenner had barely slept, but there was a peace in his tiredness. Nola and Jovie ran through the apartment in their pajamas, chasing each other with giggles that reminded him why everything he'd endured was worth it. On the coffee table sat 2 coloring books, 3 plastic teacups, and a folded piece of paper, Carla's letter. She had left it in the mailbox after leaving the night before. He hadn't opened it yet. He didn't need to. Not yet. Sabine was in the kitchen, pouring coffee, barefoot, her hair loosely tied. She moved around like she belonged, not as someone trying to replace anyone, but as someone who knew how to be present without demanding space. Brenner watched her from the doorway for a moment. "You stayed," he said, voice rough with gratitude. She looked over her shoulder, smiling softly. "You didn't ask me to leave." At 10 a.m. sharp, the knock came. Carla stood in the hallway, more composed this time, holding a small tote bag. Her face was pale, but she smiled when the door opened. Nola peeked from behind her father's legs, cautious but curious. "Hi," Carla said gently. "I brought some things to do, if that's okay." Brenner stepped aside. "Just remember, Today's not about proving anything. It's about being real. Carla nodded. That's all I've got left. The visit was quiet, full of small talk, scattered laughter, and hesitant moments. Carla colored with the girls, answered their questions, listened when they spoke about school and ballet and cartoons. She didn't try to hug them too soon. She let them lead. And when the hour ended, she stood up slowly and said, "Thank you for letting me try." Nola handed her a picture she had drawn. "You can keep it, but don't crumple it, okay?" Carla blinked fast, holding back tears. "I won't." After she left, Sabine sat beside Brenner on the couch. Neither said anything for a long moment. Then, he finally opened Carla's letter. Inside, a single paragraph. It didn't ask for forgiveness. It didn't beg for a second chance. It just said, "You were always the better parent. I was just too broken to see it." He folded the letter and looked over at Sabine. "You think I can really do this?" She reached for his hand. "You already are." And in that small, imperfect living room, Brenner realized something. Tomorrow didn't wait for him to be ready. It just came. And he met it standing. If this story touched you, if it reminded you of someone, of a difficult moment, or even of a quiet strength you once had to find, go ahead and give it a like. It helps us keep bringing more stories that move, inspire, and stay with you. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's a good time. There's always another story on the way. And who knows, the next one might just be yours.